Dave Filoni, he's just the man. On my notes here, I don't have anything written except for he's the man because that's what I was thinking when I was making my notes for today's episode. I just want to talk about him because he's getting a lot of attention now, more than he ever has. And he's doing interviews. He was on Good Morning America. He was on Entertainment Tonight. He was on many other shows, podcasts, and Jon Favreau speaking highly of him. Watching him in the Mandalorian Gallery documentary series on Disney Plus was just so nice to hear his stories and how much he cares about Star Wars, and the fact that he's just a big nerd, And I think what he did with this last season of Clone Wars, with all of Clone Wars really, is something really great and reached its full potential. We'll talk about Clone Wars for a minute. It just ended, and it was a great ride. The first 8 episodes, like everyone's talking about, weren't really, what we hoped it would be, or not what we'd hoped it would be, but just more finale-esque. And the last 4 is really what brought us all to tears and gave us so much joy and what we were hoping for. Those last. So I'll focus on that. So those last 4 episode arc was what we were waiting for. Connecting the dots between what happened from Clone Wars and Rebels. Well, I guess more specifically, the Attack of the Clones movie and Revenge of the Sith. And we all knew that this series was going to tie in directly with Revenge of the Sith. But the way it did it, I think, was very interesting. And it was that it kind of took Anakin Skywalker, Obi-Wan Kenobi, and Palpatine, and it put them all in the background, especially in these last 4 episodes. And they were mostly talked about in legacy, as far as when Maul was mentioning Skywalker, and they were like, well, what could Skywalker, he's going to become a bad guy for Darth Sidious? And they talked about Darth Sidious being, the all evil mastermind behind everything. And they talked about him as background context characters, similar to how they were talked about in A New Hope. How Anakin Skywalker was mentioned as a soldier who died a long time ago in A New Hope to Luke Skywalker, and how the Emperor was mentioned in episode 4 and 5 about how he's just the overall ruler of the galaxy, and that's all you needed to know. So it was also tying in the fact that connection between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope. So I just thought that was interesting. I'm glad now that it didn't have any more Anakin or Obi-Wan or Darth Sidious in it, because that story takes place in Revenge of the Sith. And I think Dave Filoni realized that when writing these episodes, is that that story is already told, and we shouldn't touch it, or we shouldn't go into those events and see what else is happening around the corner, And it's a respectful way of doing it, and just showing that, hey, other things are going on in the galaxy. This show is about the clones, and it's about Ahsoka. And if you want to know what happens to Anakin, well, we already do. We've seen Revenge of the Sith. So leading up to it, I really wanted it. I wanted to see clips from Revenge of the Sith done in animation, and maybe Ahsoka goes to the Jedi Temple, but that would just be fan service. If we think about it, that would literally just be fan service. There's no need to go back into any clips from Revenge of the Sith. We got that one where the Jedi were sensing a plot to destroy themselves in their little round table discussion. And I think that's all we needed, honestly, because that set up Ahsoka's place in the story, because she left the Jedi organization a long time ago. And when she asks them, what could be wrong with Anakin, or who's Darth Sidious, and Mace Windu tells him, I'm sorry, that's for Jedi only. You're not allowed to know that, civilian. I love that line. But it was necessary to have that moment in there because it shows Ahsoka's place in the story. So you can go into these 4 episodes without having much context of what's happened in the overall show and be safe concluding the season and knowing each character's place. I am a little disappointed in the ending as far as where Ahsoka goes from here, because there's still a huge gap of time between the end of Clone Wars to when she shows up in Rebels and figuring out what she's done in that period of time. But my main concern was that I really wanted to know how she got the white lightsabers, and I understand that it's not a story for this time because it does not make any damn sense, but I really wish there was a hint or something. You know, maybe she touched the crystal and made it a new color herself. I don't know. But she dropped the lightsabers. Or at least one of them. Did you notice that? She only showed one lightsaber dropping in the sand, and then Vader only finds one lightsaber at the end. So the whole Vader ending was really great. I love that it was all silent, and that last scene was really cool to see as a Rebels fan and seeing all of Rebels, because it showed like a transition, not just in story, but also like as far as like time lapse, but also there was an animation style change in that last scene from everything that's come before, because it was transitioning into the style of animation that Rebels was done in, specifically in obviously the Stormtroopers and in Darth Vader, obviously. And just the look and feel of it. It was showing you, hey, the world's changed. You know, this desert planet they crashed on is now snow. Everything's a little bit more simplified and organized in a empire way, and everything's darker. And it shows that they lost the Clone Wars. That's what the series was about, them losing. And it's a great transition going into Rebels. And for those of you who have not seen Rebels, you gotta watch it. It's a rough start, but I actually enjoy Rebels more than I enjoy Clone Wars. The last thing I'll say about the Clone Wars finale is it didn't have that finale feeling. You know, if we're talking about how I think it should have ended, I think of season 4 of Rebels, honestly. Without any spoilers, the ending of Rebels had so much closure for each character, and it had this very big, epic feel. And I understand that, you know, it's almost like they were setting up Rebels. So Rebels is a continuation of Clone Wars. It's Clone Wars seasons 8, 9, 10, and 11. So I get it. But Rebels really made me feel, and it really made me realize that it's over. You know, we're not going to get another Rebels season 5 or something. This one, it was almost like, okay, well, when's the next episode come out? The whole episode itself felt really quick, but the animation in this one was amazing. One thing that Dave Filoni said in his most recent interview about the last season of Clone Wars is that the main goal was just finding out what Clone Wars could be and what it was supposed to be and what the vision was by George Lucas. He was talking about how George Lucas back in 2004 had set out to create a show in CG animation which was newly developed, and they were creating new technology and a new style of animation, and that the goal was to always find out how good it could be and what the potential could become, and just keep making it great. And you can see it throughout the show up until the last episode that has some of the most beautiful animation in the entire show, specifically in that last sequence when they're falling down to the planet after the ship has, you know, exploded. And that was a really cool scene, and to that I think it was a great ending.